as well as provide updates of vital information essential to the operation of city government. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of city council, and the city administrator. And the ordinance also mandates the city administrator as the chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is certainly open to the public, those present and those viewing, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7:00 p.m. in City Hall council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month and the fifth Monday in open forum. We do encourage, of course, citizens to engage our online platforms, and if you have any questions, please contact our staff and we will certainly be responsive to you. We also encourage everyone to visit the City of Roswell website for meetings, events, and departmental information, as well as we encourage you to download the City of Roswell app and web service portal as a mechanism to report any issues or concerns. The first item on the agenda for this evening of the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for May 9th, 2023 is the approval of the minutes for the Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee meeting of April 11th, 2023. Motion by Councilmember Hill, second by Councilmember Beeson. Further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And the record will note that Councilmember Peter Vanstrom has joined us as well.
And
yes, sir.
The mayor's on his way. We were in a late meeting.
All right, thank you, sir. Mayor Wilson will be here momentarily. All right, the first item, or second item we have on the agenda under administration is the consideration to award a contract for NFP corporate services for employee benefits consulting services in an amount not to exceed $91,200 with annual renewal options for a maximum of 3 years. Ms. Linda Warren.
Good afternoon, Council. And the mayor, he's here in spirit. As you stated, City Administrator, this is, we're asking for consideration to award a contract to NFP Corporate Services for employee benefits and consulting. The current broker, One Digital, we've been with them since 2012. We renewed in 2017. So we're looking forward to moving on with a new broker.
All right, I'm assuming that the Finance Department has reviewed the matter as well.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions of the committee, Mayor and Council? Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. How does this compare to the last one? I mean, is this in line as far as finances go? And I'm sure you've done all the background checking and question asking.
Absolutely. The current broker, I believe we paid $95,000. This lowest bid came in at $91,000. So they're a little bit less. We save a little bit more. But we're excited to move on with a new service.
Councilmember Hills. Hall. I'm sorry, Councilmember Hall.
My twin. Price isn't always everything. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're excited to move forward and what kind of services that you're going to get?
Absolutely. With one of the reasons we are looking forward to moving forward is some of the services that we need on the administration side. The current provider, we're using a system called SmartBin. It's not always user-friendly during our open enrollment process. The new service provider, not only are we going to we're going to use another system called B-Swift, which is very popular, but also the services they'll provide with open enrollment, with ACA reporting, Affordable Care Act reporting. They'll manage that for us. We don't have to do that in-house. A lot of the work that we're doing, the team is managing right now. The broker will step in and manage it for us. And so we're super excited about that.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments regarding this item? Seeing none, This item is a consideration to award a contract for NFP Corporate Services for employee benefits consulting in an amount not to exceed $91,200. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item, item number 3, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a one-year contract with Midwest Employers Casualty Company for excess workers' compensation coverage with an annual premium of $163,627. Ms. Warren?
Yes, so this is simply an annual renewal. We've come before council last year with the same renewal. This is for our excess workers' compensation coverage. The difference is in the premium. The difference is attributed to a payroll increase of 3.5%, and that's attributed to the salary increases in police. But if I have our vendor here to explain it, if you need more detail on that.
Thank you. Any questions about this item number 3, regarding excess workers' compensation coverage? Any questions? All right. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Is this, this question is for Mr. Davidson. Is this something that falls under the insurance arena that you manage, the workers' comp, self-insurance, or?
So HR covers workers' comp. I cover the liability casualty,
Okay,
property damage.
thank you.
All right. Any further questions or clarification, information? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Warren.
Thank-
All right, the next. Yes. The next item, item number 4, is, we have a few grant items here. Item number 4, consideration of a resolution to reallocate unexpended community development block grant coronavirus funds. All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Going to pull that up for us.
See. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is a reallocation of our community development block grant funds, coronavirus funds, from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's an amount of $115,471 and some change there. There's some unexpended funds that were nonprofits were unable to use, and we initially presented this back in November. We had 4 proposals at that time. We did a public comment period. We got, I think, 3 or 4 public comment period, or comments back. Those comments were attached to the agenda item. Unfortunately, we're down to just one proposal at this point in time, and that's the Child Development Association tuition reimbursement or tuition assistance. We recommend that these funds are becoming difficult to spend because there is an angle where you have to have been impacted by coronavirus. So we would like to recommend that these funds be reallocated to the Child Development Association.
All right, thank you. Thank you, sir. Any questions? Yeah, I'm sorry, Councilmember Palermo.
So is there, with the proposal, is there the ability to confirm and ensure that the tuition reimbursement or scholarships, whatever they be called, is going to Roswell residents?
I can assure that Child Development Association, they've been aware of that. So they submit a list that includes the addresses of the people they've served with that before we reimburse them. They're very well aware of that. I can reemphasize that though.
I'd like to motion to approve this.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Palermo, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, and then the next item is item number 5, consideration to approve a reallocation of community development block grant funds.
This is some more money from HUD. The city needs to reallocate in the amount of $80,362 and some change. This is regular CDBG, so this does not have the coronavirus component on it. We've got some options here. We're really just seeking guidance. There will need to be a public comment period, but we can solicit proposals or we can identify some unfunded city priorities for these funds.
All right, yes, Councilmember Hills.
Yes, thank you. So this is what I have talked with, I believe, all of you about moving this money to put toward the demolition of 199 Grove Way. So this is money that is separate from what we just voted on with the CDBG COVID money. This is a whole different bag of money. I wish you had a lot more bags of money, but my recommendation, and I've cross-checked this with Mr. Alford and in the grants department about moving that toward helping the Housing Authority demolition, the property that is in flux right now in the process of getting a loan to redevelop that area. So that is my recommendation.
All right, yes, Councilor, sorry,
Lee,
Mayor Wilson, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Lee, just to be clear, this, in your opinion, needs to be allocated towards the RHA?
I do.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Beeson.
So would that essentially be a motion that we would allocate those funds and then it would go to public comment for people to weigh in the same way they did with the CDA from the 18th until the 19th?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Motion to
Is that a
approve.
motion? All right, motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Beeson. Any further comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, passes unanimously. Item number 6.
Sorry, just a clarification, I support that and glad we're doing that. So the comment period would be the opportunity for residents to comment on the suggestion or the proposal to move that money towards the RHA, is that correct?
That's my understanding of the motion and the intent.
And this is money that was unable to be spent from the previous cycle, a couple of previous cycles. Is that right, Charles?
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
All right, thank you for the clarification, Councilman Palermo. All right, item number 6, consideration of a fiscal year 2022 and 23 application for a charging and fueling infrastructure discretionary grant program, community program grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation. Mr. Blitch, yes. Hi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Mayor, Council. This is a grant opportunity that we wish to apply for. Roswell is eligible under the community program, which has about $350 million to award under the current notice of opportunity for funding. The project that we're proposing is an electric vehicle charging and alternative fuel network. Allowable expenses include planning costs, engineering and design, land acquisition, equipment, installation, maintenance, management, education, and community engagement. Some of the key features are infrastructure and charging fueling equipment, public-private partnership and private investment, economic development and business opportunities, workforce development. The charging stations must be publicly accessible. They also must be ADA accessible. There's a minimum of $500,000 for the request and a maximum of $15 million. There's a priority that needs to be established for low to moderate income neighborhoods. We already have one along the Holcomb Bridge corridor. We also have to measure transportation emissions. Our request is for $8 million with a $2 million match. We believe that we could do an RFP for a private vendor to pay all or a portion of the $2 million in match. We're unable to name the vendor as we put in the application because it requires a competitive procurement process that we have to engage in after we receive an award. And applications are due on May 30th, the reason why we're here tonight. And Daryl wants to tell you a little bit about why it's economic development friendly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This is really a phenomenal opportunity to stay ahead of technology and put in some infrastructure for our residents and visitors using primarily federal dollars. We are anticipating that we would seek a vendor who could potentially put in the local match, so we would try to do a public-private partnerships. This process would be engaging the community to study and determine the best locations of these stations. Likely it would include, the parking deck that we are planning on building, as well as some sites that we want to see redeveloped, and perhaps some of the multimodal connections for our trail network. And I see this as a terrific economic development tool which could help drive visitors to those developments, unintended. Georgia Power projects projects that the EV adoption is going to increase exponentially through 2030, and there's going to be a need for charging stations alone of about 534 charging stations in Roswell will be necessary by 2030. There are some auto manufacturers that are focusing on hydrogen electric fuel cell batteries. So as part of this process, we'll be looking at that and studying where might those stations be located and can we put them in Roswell. So that'll be part of the process. And in my view, we want to be at the forefront of this movement as it impacts quality of life of residents, as well as helps the city to stay competitive as we're looking to bring in businesses and drive values. I strongly recommend applying for this grant application.
Yes, Mayor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Daryl, I've got a question that you're probably not anticipating. It sounds like an excellent grant application. Thank you for pursuing this. So why aren't we pursuing 12 million and 3 million? Why aren't we doing 15 million? Why the 10?
Well, we have a grant consultant that's at a city of this particular size. An $8 million grant is appropriate. We don't necessarily want to be pigs.
That's great.
But a size city of this, of 100,000.
This is, your consultant, the consultant you went to advised the $10 million.
He advised 10 million.
Fair enough.
to 8
Okay.
million.
Thank you.
Councilmember Vanstrom.
Does that $2 million in match have to be procured and expended all at once, or is it something that's over time?
It would be over time. I believe it's a 5-year period in which to spend the money. Is that correct?
The match and the grant have to be expended for the 2022 by 2030. And so for the 2023 by 2031. And that includes the match.
Okay, that's great.
Councilmember Palermo.
I have two questions. So one question similar to actually the mayor, so help me understand. Is it that the grant consultant felt for a city of this size that perhaps we would not get 15 million approved, whereas we'd be more likely to get the 8 to 10 approved? Or is it just that they didn't feel that we needed, the more money? Is it getting approved, or is it just for what our need is for our size?
I think the strategy is that everybody's going to be asking for the max. 15 million is the max, and so the sweet spot for us is to come in a little bit under because they're only going to award so many out of the 350 million, and to position ourselves in a better spot, we need to come in a little bit less than our competition.
That makes total sense, thank you. And then my second question is, you went exactly where I was thinking, Daryl, which was, so if we do request this grant and we get awarded this grant, does that mean that to be able to put chargers in a new parking deck, there'd be there'd be no costs to the city outside of money coming from here for any infrastructure aspects for chargers within a deck?
That's my hope. I think the deck would probably be built with conduits, so that would be a city cost.
Yeah.
But then the chargers, if we're granted this money.
I'm taking it one step further. On the previous slide, it said land acquisition. So that makes me think there's a great opportunity to offset the parking deck bond to acquire land for an electric parking deck. But either way, I think this seems like an exciting opportunity.
Councilmember Vanstrom, sorry, Mayor.
I think a good question is what is the cost of a charging station, including you've got to put the conduit, you've got to build it, how much does that cost? When we're looking at 10 million, what is it, how many parking space, chargers does that buy us?
You know, it depends on what type of charger. So if you have a DC fast charger, it's going to cost you $60,000 to $100,000 per charger. If you have a level 2 charger, $4,000 to $6,000. So DC fast charger, you charge your car within 30 minutes or so. With a level 2, we would be looking at a network. So in certain locations, you're probably going to want to have the fast chargers. It's off Georgia 400. If you're in a park, maybe it's a level 2 charger.
Is it level 2 right here?
This one's level 2.
Yeah, or I would add, if I may, that the economic development driver, if you got somebody that's it takes an hour to charge, they're gonna be using the coffee shop, and using the brewery, something to eat, shop while they're there, so that's great.
Mayor Wilson, I believe you had a comment or.
I'm sorry, I got so mesmerized in the conversation, I forgot what I was going to ask, so
Sorry.
forgive it,
Okay,
Jerry.
all right. Councilmember Morthland.
So the conversation they were just having about the fast charger stations, from the way I understand things, and I don't have an electric vehicle, but you get on the internet and you search these stations out. And if you're doing a cross-country tour or state-to-state type scenario, you plan your trip out around these fast charging stations. So the opportunity is absolutely there to get it right and place it in the right spot for economic development. Can you flip back one slide real quick? So that second to last bullet point where it says installation, maintenance, management, metrics, is there a way of keeping some of this money in reserve for maintenance, ongoing maintenance on these stations, or do we have to have this spent by a certain time done?
I mean, we can always do a 10%, contingency. But at least conceptually, we wanted to hire a private vendor to handle all of those things, all of the IMMs, so that would be a report that they would provide to us, on a kind of a monthly basis or quarterly basis. So we would have the installation done, they would handle the maintenance, and then they would manage the costs coming in and even provide us with metrics. That's the hope.
And that was kind of where I was going is we're going to have a subject matter expert out there handling the maintenance of these things. This is not just an electrician you can call out of the yellow pages. So it'd be nice to have a little reserve if possible for something like that, just to make sure we're doing things the right way, if possible.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. When are they going to award the grants?
U.S. Department of Transportation is pretty slow. I understand by the end of the summer, they're supposed to be awarding the ones that are easy, for them to award. And then it could take as far as September or October for rejection letters.
So we'll know
Sorry, please go
definitively
ahead.
by the end of October, you think?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Vanstrom.
How is this structured, though? Isn't there, we're talking 10 million, but you had mentioned to me that you may just get it in initially at this entry level. And how long has this been offered, and are we ahead of the curve on this pretty much if we're jumping in at this point in time, even if we don't get the giant award initially?
Now, this is brand new. This is the first round. Then they combined 22 and 23 into the same ramp.
And if you, what are the different levels that you may be awarded? You may just get a study amount, is that true?
We're not sure.
We're not sure they could, they could fund all or none, basically, anywhere in the middle.
And anywhere in between. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Beeson.
Typically, use of these charging stations are not free. You pay a nominal fee, usually about $1 to $3 for 1 to 4 hours. In this case, does it present any opportunity for us to generate revenue off of these charging stations?
Yes, ma'am. So we have 4 charging stations currently, and we have about close to 2,000 kilowatt hours annually. And then each month we spend about $260 on electricity for those charging stations. And then the consumers pay us back less fees, about $413. So there is a little bit of a management cost that would be shared with a vendor if we were to go that route.
To Councilmember Morthland's point, as a city, are we able to earmark those funds that they can sit into, say, a maintenance or a management program so that way it essentially pays for itself moving forward?
I'm not a finance person.
We could set up any fund.
I would think that we could earmark stuff like that, yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure that if we do the initial investment, to Councilmember Morthland's point, that we're able to sustain it moving forward without it becoming burdensome.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
And just to clarify, that could include a private investment that could go well beyond the 2 million too. That really grows in the area and goes beyond that with a private investor. And maybe it's not the city's job to manage all of these at the same time. Things that I think the council and the mayor will have to discuss as we go forward.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments regarding this item? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Just one final comment, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we learned today from the Economic Development Director, quote, "Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered." We'll put that in the memoriam. Thank you, Daryl.
All right, and with that, I'll entertain a motion on this item. Motion, Councilmember Vanstrom?
Motion to approve.
All right. Second, Councilmember Beeson. Any further comments or questions? All right, seeing none. All in favor? All right, thank you. That passes unanimously. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll move to item number 7, consideration to open a 30-day public comment period for the city's 2023-2027 Consolidated Plan, Annual Action Plan, and Analysis of Impediments Plan.
Okay, so I think it was back in August, we hired a consultant, Blue Links Solutions Incorporated, or LLC, excuse me. They came and did a work session presentation about our consolidated plan, our annual action plan, and our analysis of impediments to fair housing choice plan. These are all prerequisite plans that HUD requires us to submit to them in order for us to maintain our entitlement status and receive CDBG funds annually. The CON plan sets the 5-year goals for the CDBG program. It identifies our priorities, but you don't have to specify specifically how you're going to spend it each of those 5 years. It just identifies those priorities. The annual action plan does define the projects on an annual basis, obviously, specifically what we're going to use each year's funding for. And the AI identifies barriers to fair housing choice. Okay. Jumped the gun there, but anyway, we did the presentation back in August. We also did a 30-day community needs survey, which we opened in September. We got 216 responses. And resoundingly, the number one need that we saw was the new construction of affordable housing was a major need there. We also included 5 public input meetings. 3 were with the general public, one was with our nonprofit leaders, and the other was with department heads. The consultants also did additional research through mortgage lending, real estate, census, and other sources. And basically, they've identified in our current consolidated plan that they've prepared a draft of affordable housing and administration as our top priorities. And I'll go into that a little bit more here in a second. All right, we also received our letter, official letter from HUD for our 2023 annual CDBG award amount. That's going to be in the amount of $442,071. The top priorities, which we identified in the comp plan, as I said, are affordable housing and administration. HUD allows us to retain up to 20% of our CDBG funds for administration. That goes to oversight, tracking, reporting, planning, advertising, and some fair housing education we may do on a yearly or bi-yearly basis. Right now, our draft plan is recommending that 80%, which is the 80% of our annual award, goes to the demolition and clearance of 199 Grove Way for the Housing Authority, which would be in combination of the funds you guys just recommended to reallocate. And then also 88,414, or 20% to administration and planning going forward. All right, so the analysis of impediments is required to be submitted alongside of our 5-year action plan. It examines potential obstacles to equal access for housing and proposes strategies to overcome those obstacles. The impediments that were identified by our consultants for lack of affordable housing, barriers limiting housing choices, and the lack of fair housing awareness. The recommendations and what we would submit to HUD was that we'd continue to encourage, support developers in affordable housing. We'd support rehab of existing housing to preserve the stock, particularly for seniors. And we review ordinances to eliminate any exclusionary zoning, and then also conduct, promote fair housing, training, education for residents and any housing stakeholders. So if you guys approve of that draft, it does require a 30-day public comment period. And so staff can open a public comment period on May 18th, because we have to place an ad in the paper. We close it on June the 19th. That includes physical copies at the City Hall and Roswell libraries. We do a notice in the newspaper as well as web and social posts. Right now, I think this says June the 2nd, but I think public hearing right now, we had to kind of ballpark this. I think I've got it scheduled for June the 6th, but that can be rearranged. And then it would go to City Council on July the 10th for adoption. We do have to submit something to HUD by August. So our recommendation is to approve the comp plan, annual action plan, and analysis of impediments, or at least to approve it for the 30-day public comment period.
Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Alford. Just for everybody's information, this is similar to what the comp plan looked like for the previous 5 years. We have adjusted. I've been working with Mr. Alford on this. We have given this a tighter nod toward the Housing Authority, but it's not exclusive to the Roswell Housing Authority, so we have flexibility depending on how this vote goes and how it goes in the coming years. But I have made the recommendation based on this mayor and council's investment in the Housing Authority. And Ms. Beeson, I know you're newer, but I believe we've had your support as well. I don't want to misspeak. But that, I meant Councilmember Beeson. So anyway, just to wrap that up, it is very similar. There's not a huge change in this, and certainly the affordable housing piece and redeveloping a housing authority is a perfect match for us on this. And the money that we would get this year for CDBG allocation, we would couple with that 80,000, give or take, that is reallocated money. So we come in around 433 grand, give or take. We have not gotten a final estimate from Penrose on the demolition of 199 Grove Way yet. We're waiting for that. I expect there'll be a difference in there somehow. But in speaking with the leadership of the Housing Authority, we will come up with a plan to work that out. So I feel confident about it, and I'll be supporting this. And I appreciate all your work on this, Mr. Alford.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Lee, Councilmember Hills, for all your work on this. I know it's been substantial. I always get scared when I open up a packet and I see a letter addressed to me that I've never seen before, so I always get like, oh my God, what's that? Are we currently in a consortium agreement with Cobb County now?
Yes, that's the next item. We're going to discuss that, but we're in the Georgia Urban County Consortium, it's led by Cobb County.
Okay, very good.
That's for home funds.
And is that a 3-year agreement as well, the one that we're currently in?
Yes, sir.
Ends at December 31st, 2023?
Yes. it-
Okay, but that one's current and active, and this will update, this agreement will update that, and it also will be a 3-year agreement as well.
This one is a 5-year.
This is a 5-year.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm looking at it here, it says January 1, 2024 through December 31st, 2026. The letter written to me also says that. It says, obviously, you got to declare by Friday, May 19th.
That's the next item, Mayor.
Sorry.
It's okay. We're going to get to that.
What did she used to say in Saturday Night Live?
Banana, Dana, banana.
Yeah, what'd she used to say?
All right. Yeah, this is 2023 to 2027. That's what it'll take.
All right, Councilmember Hall.
And just to be clear, you're hiring Blue Links again, or is that you're just opening up this period without Blue Links, or is this part of their engagement that they had with us?
They're still engaged, yes.
Okay.
They developed the draft plan.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Beeson. Councilmember Beeson.
Just wanted to flag, so when this whole process was going through the, initiation last year, I followed it quite closely, even though that I wasn't on council. I also did submit public comments that were affiliated with it. I want to commend staff and then council before I was on for initiating the process a little differently this time around as opposed to how it was addressed last year. So I do appreciate that. Also, the public hearing this time is going to be after June 2nd is how it's phrased. A concern I had last year when we were doing CDBG public comments was that the CDBG public meeting was the exact same day that mayor and council had the vote. So I just want to flag as a point of feedback, can we make sure that that's closer to the June 2nd side as opposed to closer to the July 10th side of after June 2nd?
So the reason I put after June 2nd is because our citizen participation plan requires us to give 15 days public notice.
Okay.
So it has to be after June the 2nd, but right now I've tentatively slated it for June the 6th. So that would be, about a month before it would go to council.
Perfect. Just, I say as a council member this time around, I'd like to be able to take on the public feedback and absorb it before we go into a public meeting where we have to vote on it. That's my only feedback on this.
Councilmember Hills. I'm sorry. All right.
Forgive me. I lost it.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right. Any further questions or, yes, Councilmember Hills.
I do, I'm sorry. And this is watered down iced tea, not wine, I promise. So this is the con plan. It's a 5-year plan. So this is what we went through last year was not this. the con plan. Yes, okay, thank you.
All right. Any further questions or comments regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Beeson. Any further question or comment? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Item number 8 is consideration of an agreement to continue participation in the Georgia Urban County Consortium. Sir.
Okay, so we have been, the city of Roswell's been in the Georgia Urban County Consortium since about 2012. We were a few years where we took a break there, but the participation in this consortium allows us to receive home funds through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Without this participation, we wouldn't be eligible to receive them on our own because we're just not big enough to receive these funds. The city receives around $100,000 per year, and funds can be used for affordable housing acquisition, construction, rehab, down payments, or rental assistance. Traditionally, we have passed through these funds to nonprofit partners. Right now, they've sent the mayor a letter and requested that we renew our agreement in the consortium for the next 3 years. And so if we want to continue our participation, we need guidance as to whether the mayor should sign that letter or.
Councilmember Hills.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Alford. Mr. Alford and I talked about this, and I'm going to direct him with some questions so that everybody gets a full understanding of what this is. I think the home funds have been a good opportunity, but they're very difficult, from what I understand, to obtain. The hoops to jump through and the methodology, the paperwork by which that has to be executed. And it's my understanding, and I'm going to again defer to Mr. Alford, that the GUC is the home funds are only through GUC. That is the only function of this. So I was advising to discontinue participating with the home funds because we've got several years backlogged of money that was unable to be spent or executed to obtain the funds, and the GUC is the vehicle by which we do that. So one leads to the other, and it's almost to the point where we're going out and trying to encourage people to get on board with this, and they're unable to execute. And I mean that in the kindest way for our nonprofits. They've got enough on their hands that this kind of administrative work, and maybe I should let Mr. Alford describe that a little bit better, if you would please.
Sure.
Councilmember Hall. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. And we've been getting these home funds. Has council weighed in on these home funds? I just don't recall.
Yeah, we accept them every year, and then if we have applicants or proposals submitted, you guys will allocate those proposals. However, we haven't done it in like the last 2 or 3 years because we've been backlogged. Trying to
Okay. Just during my tenure of the last 3 years, I haven't seen.
We have accepted them, but we haven't come back and said, hey, we have some proposals for you to spend them. So they just kind of.
So we're just sitting on these monies that we have accepted?
We accepted the 2022 funds not too long ago, and part of the reasons we thought the Housing Authority could use those funds for this redevelopment, but they just don't have the capacity right now to do that. So that was the main impetus for accepting those funds.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Wilson.
I know you can explain that. So the Housing Authority, the Roswell Housing Authority can't accept $100,000, don't have the capacity through this program?
It's pretty difficult to.
Because of the program qualifications?
Correct, and while they were
Okay.
working through last
Okay.
year's process to get the loan to redevelop last year and missed it by a few marks, they were going through so much with that. Now they're back in the game on the same process, new loan, but the home funds, again, is just another entire layer
So
of.
knowing that how many hoops the Housing Authority has to jump through as an entity in and of itself, that's a remarkable statement. So there's actually a program that a Housing Authority has a hard time complying with along these lines?
All the nonprofits.
No, I'm talking about the Roswell Housing Authority has a hard time getting the money through compliance? Like they don't meet certain requirements of the program?
There's a lot of stipulations that come with it. For instance, anytime you do any kind of rehab with the funds, you have to bring the entire unit up to code. So you can't do spot rehab and things like that. You can do tenant-based rental assistance, which a lot of places do, but Housing Authority doesn't do that. And we don't have a TBRA program in the city of Roswell. Really, it's best for new construction if they can work it into a big deal, but the portion that we get from Cobb County is so small, and the cost of land in Roswell is other places is so high, it's really been an impediment there. I'll give you an example of the Habitat did a project where they were doing an acquisition, and they were gonna build a Habitat house, and they tried to combine two lots, just to get their model on that, big enough where they could sell the house. But the cost ballooned beyond, while complying with the program, they ballooned so high, they eventually had to abandon the project. So they ended up having to pay the funds back to Cobb County. The Drake House has accepted the funds before, and they ended up turning it down because of Social Security requirements, as well as the affordability period that it places on the units as well, is longer than CDBG.
So it sounds like you and Councilmember Hills talked about and said, does it make a great deal of sense to continue to pursue this program going forward, if I'm hearing you correctly?
Yes.
And just to follow up, forgive me, it's my recommendation to this body that we do not renew the agreement. We've got a lot cooking here. We've got our new, as of last May, should we call lobbyists, the company that goes out and looks for grants for us that match our needs. So we have another way to fulfill a lot of things that are on our needs list. So rather than us having to really work the trenches in order to get go find somebody for this, I'd rather we focus on the things that we're doing really well in our grants department. So my recommendation is to not renew the agreement. And forgive me for cutting off more comments, Councilmember Leeson.
That's all. Councilmember Palermo, I want to make sure I acknowledge him. Councilmember Palermo, did you have a comment? Yes.
Yeah, so and thanks for filling that in, Councilmember Hills. The irony is when I saw this, I saw construction and rehab, and so I was thinking I'd love to give that $100,000 for the construction needed at RHA, or for just the rehab of any and all units, because part of the whole issue with the RHA is just the lack of rehab and maintenance over the years. So when I certainly originally read this, I saw it as a great opportunity, and every bit would help towards the RHA goal. But the more I'm hearing of the challenges, I guess it does give me concern with staff using their effort on something that's not even getting utilized versus having staff finding grants that the city's actually able to use.
Councilmember Beeson.
I have 3 questions. First of all, how much money do we have in reserves that have been built up from this over the years?
So right now, let's see, we have 300, that's not correct, let's see. Yeah, we got about $305,000 unexpended. The caveat to that, though, is 15% of that is a mandatory set-aside for CHODOs, which is Community Housing Development Organizations. It's actually 20%, 15% for CHODO activities, as they call it, and 5% for CHODO operating, which can be like an audit and stuff. So 20% of that has to go to a Community Housing Development Organization, and we only have so many people that can qualify for that. So the Housing Authority can't even qualify for the full amount of funding because by the nature of their structure, they can't qualify for the CHODO qualifications. The only other 2 that have ever qualified for that would be Habitat and Homestretch. And so it's about $305,000. 20% of that has to go to a CHODO, and the other 80% is unrestricted. So
We've applied for this every single year?
we don't have to apply for it. It's a formula grant through our.
Oh, I'm sorry, in the past, have we applied for this every year? When's the last year that we applied for this and got the money?
We don't, it's a formula grant through HUD, so we get it automatically through our participation through GOV.
And if we're getting it automatically, then can you walk me through what are the downsides? Are we still expending resources?
We can split actually 5% of the funds for administration funds, but basically right now the last funds that we're spending is reallocated funds from 19 and 20, and that's with Enable of Georgia. And so just trying to get them to spend the funds has been a bit challenging. And another caveat is once you spend, it's a weird rule that HUD has, once you spent home funds on any units, you can never spend home funds on it again. So they applied the funds that they received to their multi-unit houses they have for special needs people here in Roswell, and so they'll never be able to use the funds again. But eventually, they're also, we're on deadlines for Cobb County, so each one of those, I didn't break it down by year, but we have some of the funds that are due at the end of 2023, so you got about $80,000 that has to be spent by 2023, at the end of 2023, and then a third of those funds have to be spent by the end of 2024, and then so on.
And are there fees or charges if we don't spend by that date?
There's no fees or charges, no fees. We just have to give it back to them. It puts them in a bit of a bind because they're trying to spend it. They have a timeliness report they have to submit.
They being Cobb County?
Cobb County, yes.
Okay.
And so we're just not really, haven't been great stewards of it because we can't spend it. So it ends up going back to them and they have to figure out how to spend it within a certain time period. But there's no fees associated with it. They're not going to penalize us in that way.
I appreciate it, yeah. I guess on my end, I completely understand the reluctance to continue with the program, given the fact that it's a use of our resources and our funds if we're not using it. I guess, when's the last time that we circled back with our nonprofits that would be applicable to this use?
I think it was the end of 2021 when we put invited them to submit proposals. And that was for the full amount that we had at the time. And the best we got was, I think, a $75,000 proposal from the Naples. So that wasn't even for the full amount at that time. We haven't circled back with them since then. I think maybe Habitat has presented some ideas, but they haven't presented them directly to me. But the end of 2021.
End of 2021?
And the Housing Authority, obviously, we've been talking to them about using them.
I guess my hesitancy is we haven't spoken to the nonprofit organizations that could potentially use this in nearly 2 years. We literally just 2 slides ago had a whole slide about how affordable housing is a dire need here in Roswell. And this is obviously not free money, but it's money being given to us that can help alleviate that concern. I hear you in terms of we're not using it. I just don't know that to the best of our abilities we're going through all of the potential outlets that we could be using at this point. That's just my concern.
Councilmember Palermo.
So, knowing how much grant money is out there and how many opportunities there are for Roswell residents, I do like the idea of knowing that you and our grants department is focusing on grants that we have full confidence will be used in the city of Roswell. So I lean towards with this discussion of not continuing in this, but to Councilmember Beeson's point, the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of dollars that are still just outstanding and available, I think it certainly makes sense for us to make sure to really just advertise and market that and see if there's any way we can help some people use that. But again, just I want to make sure that our grants department is nonstop looking for grants that will be used, and this clearly over the years has shown it's not one of them.
Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 21, Mr. Alfred, that all call was sent out to all nonprofits, right? To say, hey, we've got this home fund.
All the housing providers.
Right. And I believe most, if not all, in Roswell stay in pretty tight communication, is my understanding. I can't validate that right this minute, but it is my understanding from several people in our nonprofit community that these are really hard. They're, for a lot of volunteers, very few paid. I'm with you. Capture as much money as we can, but we're still, the money that's gonna expire or should have been spent by the end of this year has been sitting there for 2.5 years now, almost, not quite 2.5 years. So we're getting to the point where I believe, Mr. Alfred, you all didn't want to cast out again with all this backlog money sitting there coming in, because if we end up turning it away and we accept the next batch of money, we sort of look like we don't know what we're doing. It's a 3-year, correct? You have to spend it within the 3?
Oh, no, what's the deadline of when we would need to notify them before getting another round?
They wanted it back by May the 19th. Obviously, that didn't work with our committee council schedule, so I'm sure they would do it, to the end of May. But they do have to submit documentation. There's a timeline in the letter from the mayor. They do have to submit documentation to HUD, I think in July. that says they're going to reapply and for the consortium, and this is who's going to participate.
Councilmember Hills?
One more thing I didn't ask about is, if we decide to pass on this at this time, in '26, can we re-enter that conversation with GUC and renew that or restore that relationship?
Yes, I would say so.
And to that point, what I'd like to see is if we do end up getting nonprofits to actually use that money, then that's something that I think we absolutely should do is getting back involved in the future. But again, clearly there's other opportunities right now.
Councilmember Morthland?
Can you give me a couple of examples on neighboring communities that are actually using this, how they are using this as compared to where we can't?
I would say I can just use what, Cobb County's doing. I've been on their committee for grant applications for their CDBG program at home, and they use the tenant-based rental assistance program. They have private housing providers that are giving out vouchers or providing tenant-based assistance for low-income residents. We don't really have that. That's, I think, in Marietta. And I think the Marietta Housing Authority has used it for various developments and things like that. But I don't.
So my train of thought there is, if the Roswell Housing Authority, as solid as they are and as smart as they are and the mission that they serve, if they can't use these funds because of all the red tape that they have to run through, and we have housed Roswell residents with assistance vouchers for temporary residents. We actually have a need that would fit within this verbiage. However, due to all the red tape, we can't use it. I mean, that stands out pretty solidly. My comment here is, if we're not going to use the funds, and if some of the funds are going to expire or have to be set back at some point, I would say let's go ahead and do that so people can use them, so people that need them can use them, instead of it just sitting in our account growing dust until we have to turn them over if we know we're going to turn them over.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Beeson?
Throwing out a request for the good of the order, take it or leave it. In the interest of time, I realize it's not ideal. Is there any way that we could table this item until the next committee meeting, which is in 2 weeks, and in that time, reach out to the nonprofits we talked to before and have them come in for an open house meeting to discuss if there's any way they could use those funds? I just feel like it would be remiss on our part if we didn't circle back with them, because it's been 2 years. 2021, everyone was still trying to recover from COVID. I think no one was looking at any kind of construction at that time, especially a nonprofit focused on affordable housing. They were just trying to stay afloat. I would rather circle back with our local organizations to see if there's possibly a need coming down the pike before we pass on it. And then if and when they say no in our 23rd meeting, then we can officially make the vote. I just feel uncomfortable doing this without having their input first.
Councilmember Hills?
Thank you. Good idea, and clarification with Mr. Alford. So the nonprofits in the city of Roswell, we may have one new, Family Promise, that has an office here, but I don't think anything has changed in the volume or who. So the ones that have consistently applied or said they were interested, are they the same ones traditionally that have tried to go for these?
Yeah, there's only so many that are eligible. Drake House and Able, but to my knowledge, they've expended. They won't be eligible because they've used the funds on multiple properties or all the properties. But they may have another one out there that I don't know. But Drake House and Able, the Housing Authority, Home Stretch, those are the four that I can remember, and Habitat, excuse me. So those 5.
And some of those that you just mentioned are, I don't want to disparage anybody because everybody's station with their own nonprofit is different each year, but some of those that you just mentioned that have been qualified or have been eligible are the ones who are turning their money back in. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Councilmember Beeson?
I know recently a local nonprofit that you just flagged, and I'm not trying to tip their hand on anything, so I won't name them, just acquired some acreage and property, and they are looking to do construction at some point in the near future. So I think some conditions have probably changed since the end of 2021. That's where my point of hesitation comes from.
Any further question or comment regarding this item? Any motion? Councilmember Hills?
Yes, I motion that we pass on renewing the agreement for the 24 to 26 time period, and that we revisit that as the next cycle comes about.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Hills. Is there a second?
I'll second if that includes that we will raise awareness and work on getting the hundreds of thousands of dollars of this that's not been able to be used. Is that something I second?
All right. Second by Councilmember Palermo. I'm assuming that Councilmember Hills will accept that as a friendly amendment to your motion?
Oh,
or
yes.
Information? Okay, all right. And so we have a motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further discussion?
So we're not returning to a request for, am I missing this? We're not returning any follow-up requests to those organizations before we move forward, or we decided no on that for 2 weeks?
Let me, Mayor Wilson, you have the
Sorry,
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, may I request that the chair, the volunteer chair of the Roswell Housing Authority address the body on this issue?
Sure.
With the body's permission?
I'm assuming that is acceptable by the committee? All right. Yes, ma'am, come on up, come on up.
Thank you. Sorry, I was listening online and I heard our name and I thought I should come over and just kind of give our 2 cents on this. He is right. Home funds are very difficult to comply with. And once you take an out payment of home on anything, you can't take another one. So you better be very strategic about what you take and the restrictions on it. And the compliance is long-term, and it's costly for any organization that takes those home funds. So if it's not a significant amount of money, you're going to spend more to comply, potentially, depending on what your mission is, than what you've accepted over a term of time. So I'm not saying that the Housing Authority wouldn't take the funds, but we have taken them before, and now that has prevented us from taking any more home funds on a particular parcel of project, is it Myrtle Street? Where we've got a long-term compliance. We also have Federal Home Loan Bank grant/loan on that property as well, and over a portion of time, it's been very costly for us to comply with both of those grants. And with the Federal Home Loan Bank loan, it can potentially turn into a loan instead of a grant if you don't meet every stipulation that they have. So one of the things that we have down, and our rents are also capped on that property because of that. So there's a lot of things about it that I can see where some organizations may not have a 15 plus 20, whatever year the compliance is on these types of loans plan or term, not know if they're going to be around that long and not want to have to pay funding back. So it's a risky, it's a wonderful thing if you can use it and if it covers the expenses of your project, but it's also something that you really have to discuss because compliance is expensive.
All right.
Just to kind of shed some light on home funds themselves. So CDBG for us has been a lot easier to spend, but I mean, it is attractive. You guys do have some home funds now that we would very much love to have for redevelopment, but it's a one-time shot, 100,000. Our developer will happily accept. I wish it was more towards the 300,000 because of that long-term compliance and what that will cost.
Couldn't it be the entire amount, though?
We could give the 305,000 to the project. The trick with that is again, the deadline for each, about a third of them are due at the end of the year, another third is due at the end of 2024, and another third is due by the end of 2025. So it becomes hard to work that into development.
And they can be used for demo, correct?
Yes, within the affordability period, it has to be up somewhere.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to give you some of that insight, just what we've learned over the years in trying to, and if you want the whole amount, being a CHODO opens up 20% more like he talked about, but that's also another expense for the Housing Authority, creating a side organization that's a CHODO that meets those requirements and things like that, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Karen Parrish. It's always a treat for you to come before us and enlighten us and illuminate us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Alfred, if we did decide to pass on this renewing of this agreement, is that 305 still in play if we were to cast out, as Councilmember Beeson had suggested, if somebody wanted to jump on that and realizing that there are some different time period constraints or requirements, should I say, on that money being spent within a certain amount of time?
Yes.
Okay. And then also, is that a reimbursable or is that they pay? How does that work?
They have to pay up front and then they get reimbursed by Cobb County.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
So I think I interrupted a motion and a second on the floor.
You did have a, yes, thank you, sir. Yes, there was a motion and a second. Any further discussion to that motion and second? All right, seeing none, all in favor? All right, all opposed? Okay, all right, motion does pass. All right, the next item is item number 9, a consideration of a text amendment to amend Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2.5, Code of Ethics, Section 2.5.3, Prohibitions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell regarding appointments and nominations to boards and commissions. Any comment regarding this matter? Councilmember Palermo?
So thank you, Mr. Knighton. And so Councilmember Beeson is definitely a great advocate, a supporter of this as well, and certainly look forward to her comments. So this is something, actually, the discussion originated probably sometime between 2019 and 2021, when we were originally discussing the ethics code and the aspect for council members taking money from the developers, and at the time, the council members that were not willing to support the update, one of the things that they had kind of mentioned is, well, everybody was doing it for the volunteers that get on the boards and commissions, which are obviously unpaid board members and things like that. But that's where in that discussion brought up that certainly I think we should address how we're making our appointments and doing that, which obviously Councilmember Beeson is a great advocate for. And with it, as certainly Councilmember Beeson has advocated of going forward, where if it's a board or committee member that's given a donation, a political contribution to an elected official, that they would not vote on the nomination for them. And that's something that, as I said in the past, I certainly support changing and happy to include that. And I think an important part as well is knowing the aspect of the committee and board members the first time that was brought up was from the discussions and the debates that the city council at that time had on pay to play for council members from developers, et cetera, and that failed at that point and was just passed this year, which I really appreciate everyone on this council's support in that. But also that's where I had raised too, that in looking at how we're appointing committees and boards, I think we need to look at it holistically and really how we improve that process. And something that certainly has come up is when we appoint a board or a committee member where they're actually able to profit off the recommendations that they're giving. And that's something I think we really do need to address. And the examples of that include just having a developer on planning commission and seeing situations where they're advocating against changes in how it and focused on how it affect them and their development and some potential misinformation we've seen from that over the years. There's also situations where we certainly don't want anyone that's profiting off the recommendations, et cetera, it leading to it being a business and revenue generator for them and increasing their business. So I think it's really important that that as we look at how should we be appointing committee members and board members, that we certainly are making it so it's not a donor or someone that's given money within the last election, similar logic like we've added for actual council members with developments. And also, again, addressing that it's not individuals that are profiting off of what they're doing. And I think that will make it more helpful. And there is the exclusion that if state law says that they need this type of interest or things like that, then of course that's an exclusion. And also there's a Roswell Code of Ordinances, which requires certain expertises or certain roles, and I think that's an important exception and exclusion that's in here. So I think that's something that kind of covers it. But basically, the goal is making sure that these boards and committees are representing residents and not representing their own specific interests. So that's what I'd like to discuss. And again, Councilmember Beeson's been a great advocate for this discussion, and certainly look forward to her comments.
Appreciate the start of the discussion from Councilmember Palermo. So this actually originated, I had legal draft this. I initiated this starting a couple weeks ago, briefed several council members on it. I do appreciate Councilmember Palermo's suggestion for the added line item, but I will go ahead and read the language that I initiated for deliberation, which was adding subsection B to our appointments section. Well, it's pretty much an amendment going underneath what we discussed just a few months ago, which was the Pay for Play initiative that Councilmember Palermo spearheaded, and I appreciate that. This adds line item B, the appointment or reappointment of a member to any board or commission where that council member knowingly accepted a campaign contribution in their last election from potential appointee or their immediate family, as well as subsection K. Neither the mayor nor any council member shall nominate or appoint any potential member to any board, commission, or authority where the mayor or council member knowingly accepted a campaign contribution in their last election from the potential appointee or their immediate family. In the way that Councilmember Palermo called it pay for play, I think the nomenclature right now is pay for power. If you look at the campaign disclosures across several years, and I wouldn't even say just recently, this is a long time situation. I think you said going back to 2019, this discussion started. It's quite easy to see which appointees to not only our boards and commissions, but the issue that really prompted me to look into this was our Board of Ethics. Some background for those who are listening, and I'm sure those in the room are aware. Our Board of Ethics is a group of residents who are picked by mayor and council. We each have 2 appointments each that sit on a roster, and in the event that an ethics violation or perceived violation is brought to the city, it would go through the city attorney first, and then 3 individuals are handpicked from this list. I made a campaign promise that I was never going to appoint anybody who I received a campaign donation from, but that's not historically always true. It's hard to say that there's no bias in these types of commissions or committees, or there's not going to be some sort of political agenda when it's easy to thread the needle with disclosures and individuals and how the appointments are made. So that was originally why I introduced the language as it's currently written to council members and mayor who are in the room. If you flip forward, there is the secondary language that Councilmember Palermo just covered, which discusses the pecuniary benefit of the decisions made by the board or commission should preclude them from being appointed or reappointed. My hesitation with including that language in my original initiated language is there's several. The first of which being the language that I introduced is related to mayor and council. We know who we received contributions from. The public knows who we received contributions from. Therefore, it's our responsibility in order to uphold the highest level of ethics to make sure that we are not initiating ingrained bias or perceived conflict of interest in who we choose to appoint. My hesitation with us trying to wax poetic about who would have a pecuniary interest with our appointments is where my hesitation is. So, for example, you gave the developer who was on a planning commission. That's really their responsibility to recuse themselves from discussion where they would have financial benefit according to city code. That's a violation that already exists on our books. However, I personally would want people who have this skill set or have experience in these practice areas to be in our boards and commissions. And to your point, I know there's some state code or even some city code where we require it. There's a reason for that. These folks work in this practice area, and some of the unintended or unfortunate outcomes that we have when we have our commissions and our committees led entirely by people who don't work in that space, is it's folks who don't have hands-on knowledge with that area. Secondarily, so I'll use myself as an example. Let's hypothetically say I wanted to be on the Recs Commission. Say my engineering firm has built parks before. Are we going to imply that I'm going to have a pecuniary interest because I helped build a park in Athens, Georgia? Who's to say? It's kind of a slippery slope, and I don't want to open that door when we already have ordinances that preclude members of our boards and commissions from voting on something that they already have a personal financial interest in. So with that, I'll turn it over to the rest of the council.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. Knight, and thank you, Councilmember Beason. I think this is a great discussion, and I think a very healthy one and a great example of what we should be discussing at committee. So with those examples and things like that, I think, first of all, you mentioned, the expertise that certain individuals have in a certain profession, and I think the problem is giving them the opportunity to use that expertise that benefits them instead of what benefits the residents. And that's why I think we really need resident point of view on boards and commissions. Because another example I'll use actually goes before I was on council, so before any of us were on council, was when the UDC was being created. Basically, it had some residents, but it also had some individuals that develop in Roswell, and they were able to use their expertise in a way that really benefited them and did not benefit the people of Roswell with what we got by that first edition of the UDC. So I think what we need is more resident representation. We have people with hands-on experience within staff and within the community, but when we're appointing this, it should be people that we truly, that council is confident is gonna not be making decisions that are financially benefiting them. And with that, it doesn't mean they can't have the opportunity for expertise, because you gave the example of what if you do developments, or whether parks or development, whatever example we want to use, in Athens, Georgia. That is very different than within Roswell. And so I think ultimately, if you read the language, it is very high level, and I think it is giving a lot of opportunity for discretion. And I think a lot would probably argue that it doesn't go far enough, and I understand where they're coming from. But what this is doing is at least setting an expectation, because I'll tell you right now, the way it works is if there is somebody nominated by the mayor and the mayor chooses to bring them forward to the council, then when we're on the dais, then it looks personal if voting against when not having actual specific reason to not support it. So for that reason, I think we should be putting something in there to give the opportunity, hey, it's nothing personal, but I'm going to make the decision that this person is potentially profiting off of the decisions and recommendations they're making. Or a colleague can say, I disagree. I think that they're not profiting off it because, back to your example, they do this in Athens. They don't do this here. But I think it is important that we are setting the expectations of how we elected officials are going to appoint boards and committee members. And I think everything single update in there is going to make this a better process.
Councilmember Vanstrom.
I can't quit talking about fences.
At least it's a committee.
We had we just went through, something feels so similar. We went through a discussion of backyard, side yard, front yard, and ended up getting into a whole rabbit hole of fence designs, types of materials, and transparency. I don't quite understand how this went from Councilwoman Beeson had a proposal, and then now we've got this addition that's on there at the same time we're presenting this proposal. I am a year and a half in. I may not understand the processes. I would much prefer that we take care of the 2 paragraphs that were proposed and take care of that situation, because following the conversation that you two have begun, you're going off on a different direction, I feel like, than the context of what these first 2 paragraphs are. And I would love to see them just handled completely separate. Take care of this situation that we've been presented by Councilman Beeson, and then address yours. And I don't think there's anything wrong with separating those. I know you want to attach them, and I do appreciate that, Councilman Palermo. You shared that with me. I personally think we're ending up discussing so much here. I'd rather just see them separate and taken care of separately.
Councilmember Hall.
just to address Councilmember Vanstrom, so this language that Councilmember Palermo has in here has been actually addressed since Marcelo Zapata has been on council. And I would almost say that perhaps co-drafted it. So this is not new language. It's a matter of timing. It was appropriate to incorporate it now. This is not new. It's been around for quite some time.
Mayor Wilson, Mayor Wilson.
Well, this is where I go down the rabbit hole, Sarah, because you weren't on the council last year when we voted on quote-unquote pay for play. That's right. So, I want to be consistent. I think if the 100,000 residents were in this room and understood the dynamics, I don't think they would like what was going on. I didn't like pay for play. I was the absolute minority. It was a 5-0 vote. I congratulated Councilman Palermo on work well done. It passed overwhelmingly. I think it's overwhelmingly supported by the voters as to how they understand it. I think your introduction is put out in the voters. I think, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I think pay for play is a terrible idea. I think this is a terrible idea. I can't tell you enough how much I may be the only vote in this committee room that is opposed to this. I would plead with my brethren, my colleagues, to please stop pursuing this kind of nonsense. It is not in the best interest of the people. There are laws on the books. Trying to legislate every piece of morality in politics is a very dangerous thing. And you kind of mentioned slippery slopes there, and I'm going, yep, what's the next step? Actually, you know what? None of my friends, actually, that I associate with should be considered. And by the way, and by what do I consider a friend? I don't know. Maybe it's an acquaintance. Maybe it's somebody I've known 3 years. Maybe it's known some 3 weeks. At what point do we start cutting off the relationship bonds? Because the issue really is trust, and do people behave correctly based upon what the responsibility they're given as an elected official? And that's really what pay for play is about, and say, well, I don't trust your ability to make good decisions. And this is the next consequence of it is, I don't trust your ability. If you got $101 in a campaign contribution, and by the way, just for the record, check my appointments and my boards and commissions. I think you may find one, and I could be wrong, so I may, I don't get fact checked on this. I don't think I have a lot of people who gave me money in campaigns who serve on the boards and commissions of Roswell. But honestly, it's never been in consideration, nor would it. I think one of the people who's on the Ethics Commission, they can make a contribution to me, now that I was thinking about this conversation. But nowhere else in the boards and commission statements are going through. In other words, it's not a factor, it's not a consideration. And I think it's silly to continue down this path. And so, I think it's overwhelmingly popular. I think pay for play is overwhelmingly supported by the Roswell voters. The city council voted 5-0. The only person that opposed it is me. And here we are again. I got the feeling the only person who's going to oppose this is me.
Council Member Beeson. I'll come to Councilman.
To address that, I will say, with the exception of myself, because it was a campaign promise that I did make and I wanted to follow through with, and I also have been, I'm very, very new. So the only appointments really I think I've done so far are Ethics Commission. But everyone in this room has someone on their disclosures that is also on a committee, a board, or the Ethics Commission. So it would not just be you, however, everyone is involved. To Councilmember Palermo and Councilmember Hall's point that this is something that came from a conversation in 2019, why wasn't it introduced before? I'm brand new here. That's 4 years ago. This is the first language that I've ever initiated as a text amendment because it's something that I ran on. It was something I was very clear about. My hesitation with that, so I just as easily as you've amended this language, I just as easily could have amended the language for pay for play because this is a subsection of that category. But I think it's in the best interest of governance that we make very clear and concise legislation or ordinances or text amendments, and I don't really like it when we Frankenstein these things, right? It goes away from the original point of what we're trying to make or what we're trying to weigh, or we draft a ton of extra language. I have 2 lines that I've added as a text amendment. which is originally what I wanted to make the motion for. But really, my larger question is, if it's been a priority since Councilmember Zapata was involved, and it's been a priority since 2019, y'all have had a majority since 2021. Why hasn't this been initiated previous, or why was it not a part of the pay for play?
Yeah, and I'd actually say it's not been a priority. It's something I think we should do, but we obviously have so many priorities, but I think it's the right thing to do. It's something I certainly support. And I guess that's where I'm seeing it a little differently, is the way I'm seeing it is we're updating how we appoint boards and commissions, which I think we should be doing. And I think the way we should update it is we should, because again, I'll say, just like I told the mayor a year ago when we passed 5-0 the pay play, I respectfully completely disagree with Mayor Wilson, and I admire him standing up for what he believes in, although I completely disagree. I think this is a good change and a good improvement. And I think the key is, though, to not do it piecemeal. I think to do it piecemeal is something we got feedback from a lot of residents they didn't like. In fact, Councilmember Beeson, I wouldn't be surprised if you were someone over the years complaining about when the council would do something piecemeal regarding the UDC. Basically, the complaint we'd often get is we'd have an update to the UDC, and then just after that, a month later, we're having an update, similar place, or something like that. And it was always oh, they're doing it piecemeal, it's a pain constantly seeing it. So that's where I feel like, for the goal of making meetings more efficient for people, as well as showing what is the big picture intent, I think that without a doubt, we should be doing this. We should be doing this. What are the updates we want to make to it? Perhaps there's others. So we have the donation aspect, which I think is a great one. We have the making sure they're not profiting off of their decisions, which obviously I think is a great one. If there's another way we should do it, I don't think we should do it in 2 weeks. If any elected official here has one, let's discuss it right now, and let's make sure it's not Frankenstein. Let's make sure together we're moving forward one cohesive improvement, and then be done with it. It's just, all right, now we've got a boards and commission process that we stand by. Because here's an example I'll give you. Obviously, we all want to dread the fence discussion that we had for a long time last night. I think it would have been ludicrous if last night we said, you know what, we agree on the side yard thing, and we 90% agree on the transparency. Let's vote on and actually we deferred it. We deferred the whole thing 2 weeks before, a month before, whatever it was. I think it would have been ludicrous to say, let's not defer it. Let's just move forward this one piece, and let's bring this other piece to committee to then bring for a first reading and initiation, all those different aspects. This is an ordinance. This is going to go through a first reading and a second reading. I don't feel we should have committee today move forward the part that there's probably almost unanimous agreement on, but probably not unanimous agreement on. I don't think it makes sense for us to move that forward to committee and then have the next committee where we're moving another forward piece. And then basically, that would actually result in a council meeting. We would have a first reading and a second reading of the same exact little section, which I'd be confident Mr. Davidson probably has not happened in the past, where again, we should have the goal of making it more efficient and thinking bigger picture. Because I think this is so Councilmember Beeson, the lines you read, I think they're great additions. I think they're absolutely fantastic. And ultimately though, I think it's got to be bigger picture. It's not these two lines. It's how are we appointing boards and commissions? Let's make sure we're avoiding all possible conflicts and just setting proper expectations for this council and for the public. And I feel the added line does that. And again, if any elected official has something that I haven't mentioned or Councilmember Beeson hasn't mentioned or anybody else, this is bigger than any of us. This is how do we make the right ethics code?
Councilmember Beeson.
Totally hear you, agree that it would be asinine for us to punt the ball to 2 weeks from now. However, in the interest of being as concise as possible, because there are things, oh gosh, I'm new here, I've only been here 6 months. There are things that I would have voted with y'all on, but there was a single item that completely killed it for me, just one line, where I would have been on board with the rest of the changes that were being made. So with that, after discussion's done, I will be making the motion to move forward B and K, and then you can come right behind me and move forward line item, I believe it's subsection J, as a second motion. I'm sorry, L, subsection L. In the interest of being clear as to where we are, because again, the language was the one that I had initiated originally, with the interest of having it all deliberated here in committee. But with that, I'll turn it back over to Randy in case there's any more discussion.
Councilmember Palermo.
Just, I appreciate Councilmember Beeson's intent, and I will absolutely give her the honor of making that first motion. I do think it'd be a little asinine and a little strange to have a separate, unrelated motion, so my intent would be to actually amend your motion if that was something this committee made. I certainly want to give you the credit and the opportunity to do it, but ultimately, I think what staff should be moving forward should be those three together as one item to be presented at council and to move forward.
Mayor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The last comments, I realize there's a motion about to be made, a motion to be made and seconded and the vote about to come to the body. And I'll just say for the last time, if I thought that this was meaningful and of consideration to the people of Roswell and made a difference, you had my wholehearted support. I think this is unfortunately politics and gamesmanship, and I really wish we weren't participating and spending our time doing it. It doesn't serve our city, it doesn't serve the people who elected us, and I think it's beneath us, to be honest with you. And so I will not be supporting it, and I recognize I will go down in flames, so.
Councilmember Beeson.
With all due respect, I completely hear you. I'm not telling anybody that they have to vote a certain way. There has been a very recent instance with a commission where we lost quorum because a majority of the people who were on the committee or the commission resigned. I believe it's each and every one of them who resigned so far can be found on a disclosure. And I think it sets our city up for failure when we cannot operate in a way that is outside of the realm of politics, because I do think the resignation was political. And my goal is to try to have a wider realm of people who are applying for these roles and having a fair shot at actually being looked at or interviewed or being considered for the position on these committees, as opposed to it being someone that they personally know or met at their house or helped them get elected, because I don't think it should be about a good old boys network, and that's really where this is coming from. But with that, Chair, would I be able to make a motion?
Mayor Wilson has a comment.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm really glad you brought up that recent set of events. I think that's a perfect illustration of how this current process works, because every one of those people resigned. I was a friend with or friendly with. They supported me, and they supported most of us, and they worked for us during the campaign, and it's a perfect example. And they came to a different place politically and philosophically and said, you know what, we disagree with you and we're leaving. And I think it's a perfect example where the process worked, where the process of picking good people who sometimes, you sometimes agree with, and then sometimes people end up disagreeing with you. And they said, you know what, we feel so strongly about this, we're leaving. And I think it's a great example where the process worked. And there was personal relationship there. And there was, but to my point, you can't legislate ethics and morality in all cases in government. Ultimately, it's up to people to do the right thing, and to act in accordance with what they believe. And I think this example you just used is a perfect example. There was tremendous relationship there. One of those people is somebody I look dramatically up to, I am great friends with historically, and he said, "Kapoots, I'm out." And so I think it's a great example. System worked, and there's a great person there.
Councilmember Beeson, I believe you were preparing to make a motion.
Heard, respect, understood. With that, I'd like to make a motion to, going back to it, the consideration of a text amendment to amend Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2.5, Code of Ethics, Section 2.5.3, Prohibitions, the Code of Ordinance of the City of Roswell, with the addition of subsection B as well as subparagraph K, what we had just previously discussed, which is the first section of your packet.
I'd like to amend that motion.
Motion by Councilmember Beeson. Is there a second?
I'd like to amend it.
All right.
Mr. Davidson, you want to remind us how this worked?
You can get a second, and then you can move to amend.
Okay, so he said second first, sorry. Councilman Vanstrom, please accept my apology. I'd like to move to amend this motion. I certainly support those two lines that were motioned. I think those do improve it, and I think it certainly I think will be a helpful addition. And at the same time, also, I think it's helpful that residents know and council's focused on anybody being put on these board and commissions. It's not for the purpose of their influence gaining them profit. And so I'd like to amend the motion by adding in the additional, I believe it's section I, L, thank you.
I'll second that if you did.
Okay, all right, so now we have a second to the amended motion.
Procedural question. We have an introduction, we have a second, we have an amendment, and we have a second. So does the item move forward as initiated, or does it move forward as amended, or do I have to accept as the initiator the amendment?
The amendment gets voted on first, and if it passes, it passes. If it fails, then you go back to the original.
To the original initiation. Okay, so we're voting opposite, okay, so,
Yeah, the amendment votes
line item L first, we're
No, no,
voting
no.
on,
It's all three.
well, with the addition of line item L, I'm
Yes,
sorry. The addition of line item L is what we're collectively voting on first, and then if that does not pass, it reverts to the original motion. Roswell's Rules of Order at work, not Robert's Rules of Order, just trying to clarify, thank you.
We have a motion, we had a second, we had an amendment, and we had a second to the amendment, so we're voting on that second amendment to the motion. Is everybody clear?
It tells me Mayor Wilson's not supporting my amendment.
Well, if I didn't get him on the first one, I don't know you want him on the second.
So I believe everybody's
We'll keep
clear
adding stuff till he
what
gets
the
on.
present vote will be, okay? So, all right, all in favor? All in favor of the amended motion? All in favor of the amended motion? All right? All in favor of the, okay, I'm counting, all right? All in favor of the amended motion? All opposed to the amended motion? Okay. Well, the amended motion passes 4-3. Okay. All right. The next item we have on the agenda is the investment in budget report. I would always want to do this. We have changes to make. That'd be great to do it on Thursday. Okay, all right, so we'll have a consideration here that the committee can consider, since we do have a special called meeting on Thursday for the introduction of the FY24 budget. We'll make a suggestion here, if the committee will entertain it, of having the investment report and budget report on Thursday as well. They'll have to be there anyway. But so, Mayor Wilson, yes.
Mr. Chairman, yes. So I would like to make a suggestion to the body that we defer these two items, both the budget report and the investment report, that are to be given tonight, to move them to the council meeting on Thursday.
Special call meeting.
Special
Yes,
call
these are informational items, and I think would probably provide a nice connection between the proposed FY24 budget as well.
I feel bad about them waiting and not getting to present though tonight.
Do you guys feel bad about not presenting them?
I'll be here for the next committee, so no problem.
I'll second it.
All right? We have a motion and a second for Thursday, the special call meeting. All right? Okay? All in favor of, all right, you good? Everybody good? All right, thank you. Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.
All right. Thank you all very much. They have been tremendous throughout our zero-based budget process. Thank you. Yes, the next item on the agenda is item number 13, or sorry, item number 12, under Recreation and Parks, consideration to award a dredging services contract to River Sand Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $324,231 with annual renewal options for a maximum of 5 years. Mr. Leatherman.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. I'm just going to run through a quick background because we've been talking about dredging on the Chattahoochee River for quite some time. And so want to just provide a couple of reminder slides on where we've been in this process, and then obviously the recommendation at the end, consistent with our staff report. Just as a reminder, as we worked on the River Parks Master Plan and amending the River Parks Master Plan, dredging was a priority along the Chattahoochee River. We've been working on a contract award recommendation for the past year and working our way through the process of not only logistics, but also how we are going to activate that in and around the river, primarily at the ASAN Park site. As a reminder, we made some amendments to Phase 3 to accommodate dredging at ASAN and moved the capacity for that building off of this park site so that we would have the ability to create some dredging operations along the river. Some of the elements that we were trying to combat was the silt and sedimentation issues along the Chattahoochee that can further support recreation enjoyment by us initiating a dredge process that would start to remove some of that silt and sedimentation out of the river through a contract like we are proposing tonight. Back in May of 2022, our scope of dredging and mining at the time was to mitigate flood risk, ensure long-term viability of the Roswell River Park system, evaluate some opportunities to maximize the impacts, develop the first right of refusal to use some of that material, and establish the closed loop where we could use the material in some of our erosion and sediment control both along the river and perhaps in our parks and facilities. We have since evolved that process with the recommendation tonight and identified the footprint that you see here in kind of the pinkish color, I guess that's maybe orange pink, to allow for dredging in along the Chattahoochee River. Everything to the right would be ASAN Phase 1 and Phase 2, which is currently funded in our budget, so we're able to accommodate the dredging footprint as well as the future improvements of the park site along the river. We just met out there with our first phase of ASAN Phase 1, met with contractors in a pre-bid fashion in our procurement process yesterday. So we're excited to move this forward. Of course, I'll be here to answer any questions, but our recommendation tonight is to consider award for dredging services to River Sand Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $324,000, $324,231.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. Mayor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, congratulations to you, your entire department, Councilmember Will Mortland. The amazing amount of work that y'all have done on this in the last really 15 months has been considerable. The progress that you've made is considerable. I'm excited that you've got this in front of us. This is a big deal. It's hard for people to recognize what a big deal this is. This is such a heavy lift that you're making and have been making, and under Will's leadership as well. You guys have gone from really starting at a place of zero and get us to a place of delivery on a very, very, very significantly difficult project that was very complex. And this is so fun to see the practical side of this actually come through in really a year's time. It's incredible. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Councilmember Lermo.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Yeah, Councilman Morthland gave me a call to discuss this and walk through some of the details that you have, Mr. Leatherman, and definitely a great job to really your department in making this happen, and great job with Councilman Morthland's leadership. But I actually want to give credit really to this mayor and council, and I believe I said it when we had adjusted that last year, which was so when the majority of this group started in 2022 is when you all saw that as a need and really something to address. And that was amazing to me because certainly for many years had always heard about the need for dredging, but there was literally zero being done to make any steps towards even considering actually dredging. So I definitely want to give credit not just to Councilman Morthland and not just to Rex and Park, but really this entire mayor and council, because I was blown away last year when so quickly this became a priority, and now it's amazing to see this quickly becoming a reality.
Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, Michael, thanks just for repeating the record. Just, it's so funny that this council, this body, along with Randy and your team, deserves so much credit. because I remember when we were running for office and we were incorporating some of the plan, and the River Master Plan was an obvious one, right? Like, why isn't the River Master Plan like? And getting into it, one of the things was, well, it wasn't just about money. It was the fact that we weren't dredging, and that getting back into dredging was so difficult. And I remember picking that up on the campaign trail, like, yeah, you'll never get it done. You'll never get it done. Ain't ever gonna happen. Never gonna happen. And to y'all's massive credit, came in with January and said, all right, how do we get the River Master Plan done? Doggone it, we gotta figure out how to dredging. And you guys went about the business of figuring this out. Like literally, in a year's time, it's a practical reality. I can't tell you what a big lift that is, because it was impossible to, we went back in time 2 years ago, May, people had told you, no, you're gonna have to get the River Master Plan done. There's no way you would get dredging done in the Chattahoochee. No way. And you guys have done it in a little over a year. So, and to your point, the commitment of the elected body, fantastic.
Councilmember Morthman.
These are great comments and great praise for Director Leatherman, which truly has taken the bull by the horns on this. But if we remember back to our original conversation about this, and when we were kind of putting ideas on the big wall, we were setting the standard for all of our neighboring communities to follow. No one else wanted to get in this business. No one else could get in this business because they didn't understand it. And so for Director Leatherman and the staff, I mean, words can't explain how many phone calls we've been on, how many crash sessions we've been on with Alton Georgia Power, the Department of Natural Resources, Park Service, fisheries, on and on and on. But yeah, it's a great thing to see this come through, and look forward to us being the subject matter experts for all these other neighboring communities that want to come in and take our playbook and use it.
Councilmember Hills.
This is just for fun, because I was told it would never happen. Director Leatherman, would you, I'm gonna put you on the spot, name off the agencies through which you had to work, just for our listening audience, because I
Sure.
can't remember all of them.
So we've got, as you see in the language of the staff report in front of you, the next step will be to enter into the permitting process. And so we've started kind of outlining those, and I happen to bring them. So we have the United States Army Corps of Engineers, National Park Service, Federal Emergency Management Agency, Environmental Protection Division, locally here at the state level. Our own Roswell Community Development will be looking over us. We have the Federal Energy and Regulatory Commission, because of the Georgia Power Dam site, are the agencies that we've identified that we'll be working with through the permitting process.
You left off the state of Georgia, the ARC.
They're there too, yes, you're correct.
Engineers, right, but you got the ARC, the state
Yep.
of Georgia, are two more you had to deal with.
No doubt.
Fulton County to some degree, correct?
Yes.
Right? That's 3 more.
10.
Basically 10 regulatory agencies.
Yep.
It's amazing.
All right, any further comment or question?
Oh, I forgot.
Yes.
River keepers?
Yes, not on the regulatory side,
Yeah,
but just on the
regulatory,
coordination
yeah,
side.
yeah.
Absolutely. They've been a great partner as well.
All right, thank you. Any other further question or comment regarding this item? Yes, Councilmember Morthman.
One last piece to add to this, and that is this money that we're looking to spend through this contract, the dredging operator is going to tow the sand away. They're going to get it off-site. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the way that the contract works, it's essentially allocated for 12,000 cubic yards of removal of material on an annualized basis. We will have access to some of that as part of the contract if we want to use it for our own purposes, and it meets the expectations or the needs that we have, such as on our fields or in our facilities for projects that we're working. And then some of it that is viable will be made for resale, and others will be disposed of appropriately based on the permit conditions.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
I just want to add one thing. These are the folks that came when I put together that EPW dredging seminar,
The recommended operator?
Yes.
I would assume so. I wasn't part of that meeting, but they've been very commonplace in the dredging removal business around the region.
So if we could share their information, or if DPW is involved, because a lot of local communities are very interested in dredging, and perhaps maybe they can offer a package deal for
Sure.
Roswell.
Yeah, and we've been cross-coordinating with EPW on the project as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further question or comment? I'll simply say a job well done by everyone. And with that, I'll enter a motion. I'll accept a motion. Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Motion to approve the dredging contract.
Second. Motion
Motion by Councilmember Morthland, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion or comment? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you. That passes unanimously. Is that it? All right, wonderful, wonderful. All right, I will entertain a motion of adjournment for this committee, for Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee. Motion by Councilmember Morthland, second by Councilmember Beeson. All in favor? All in favor? All right, thank you, thank you. All right, and then we will move quickly into our next committee meeting. We'll move into our next committee meeting. Okay, all right. We'll give it 2 minutes before we move into our next committee meeting. And move to the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for May 9th, 2023.
Good night. Good night.
We will begin our committee meeting in about 15 seconds.
We got a quorum, right?
All right.
I think. We don't have to have quorum?
You don't have to. All right. So, good afternoon and welcome to the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for May 9th, 2023. We acknowledge all of the council members who are present. Mayor Kurt Wilson, Council Member Christine Hall, Council Member Sarah Beeson, Council Member William Morthland, and Council Member Lee Hills, and Council Member Michael Palermo. I'll be back in shortly. The purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor and council, as well as the city administrator, and the city administrator serves as chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the public is certainly welcome to be here, we do not take public comments or questions unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received at regular city council meetings held at 7:00 p.m. in city council chambers at City Hall on the second and fourth Mondays of each month, as well as the fifth Monday in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage in our online platforms and seek out our staff for any questions you may have. We also encourage everyone to download the City of Roswell app and take a look at Roswell 365, which is becoming more populated every single day. First item on the agenda is the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for April 11th, 2023. Motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, motion passes for approval of the minutes. The second item on the agenda is under Public Safety Fire, consideration for the fire department to replace a 2001 Sutphen 75-foot ladder truck at a cost not to exceed $1,449,853. Chief Panino.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The City of Roswell owns 4 ladder trucks, and we have 3 in service at any given time at Station 21, 25, and Station 24. And we have 1 in reserve status to ensure that we can still operate those 3 ladder trucks when 1 is in for service or repair. The fleet replacement cycle for our ladder trucks is 18 years. And we have our oldest reserve, which is a 2001 that's 22 years old and has 110,000 miles on it. So we are recommending replacement of that vehicle with another 75-foot ladder truck. The lead time on those vehicles right now is about 24 to 26 months. And we're moving that forward now ahead of the budget cycle because we are expecting a price increase of 5 to 7% on June 15th. So we're trying to get this done ahead of that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Welcome, Dr. Joe Panino. It's always good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor.
We don't get to see you enough.
I know.
There'll be some technical questions later on that Councilman Palermo will ask you on items, I think line item 50 and 56. You might have some concerns about those, but I'll save those for later. Are we submitting this for FY23? Are we submitting this, is this a budget request for FY23?
So
Yes.
the,
I'm looking at Ryan, and Ryan is saying yes.
Outstanding.
yeah,
All right,
that'd be a
thank you.
Ryan question.
Ryan, are we good on FY23 with this?
So the primary purpose tonight was so that this truck could get ordered. We're currently, the way the budget amendment is structured is that we would finance this, but we have the next 2 years to figure out either if we want to continue to finance these like we have in the past, or if we, at that time, have available cash to pay.
Perfect. But you're going to ground the expense in FY23, not FY24,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Perfect. Okay, cool. And that way, Joe, we get it done today. Joe can, Dr. Panino can go ahead and order, sorry, because I know he gets very insulted when we don't call him Dr. Panino.
Dr. Chief.
Dr. Chief. We can go ahead and get the truck ordered literally this week.
It'll have to go to council, but after the council approval, yes.
Can we put it on Thursday night's meeting? Because speed is the essence. You're talking 24, 26 months, right? So sooner the better.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, cool.
We can.
Okay. All right, do we have any other?
Yes, I think Councilman Palermo had some serious questions. He stopped me before the meeting, and he said, I want to ask Chief Dr. Panino about items 50.
Dr. Chief.
And yes, and items 56. And he had some technical questions about both those items.
Okay. All right. I know. Yes, any further questions or comments regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion?
One request.
Yes, Mayor.
Make sure it's on Thursday night's city council meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very
Yes,
good.
sir. Okay, thank you. All right, with that motion, second, and notation, of course, we will have it on Thursday night's agenda. All those in favor? All right, thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Chief. Dr. Chief.
Dr. Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Why not? Yes.
Let's do it.
All right. Item number 3, under Public Safety Police, Consideration of a resolution to submit an application for the FY 2023 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant in the amount of $18,000. Chief Conroy.
All right, good evening, Mayor, City Council. This is a grant that we typically apply for and receive each year. It's from the Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance. This year, funding that's been allocated for the city is $18,000 with an $18,000 match for a total of $36,000. It will purchase 40 ballistic vests for our police officers.
Motion to approve.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
We had a motion and a second and a question by
Yeah,
Mayor
we wait
Wilson.
for the question.
All right, okay.
How do we keep from having to submit to torture our staff people from having to come in front of committee for this kind of stuff? How do we prevent this from happening?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that, Mayor Wilson, and I think that staff have had some discussions about some recommendations we would like to make to the elected body on how we handle many of these items. For instance, in this case, of course, there is a match involved, and so in order to have that authorization, it is appropriate to come before mayor and council, and maybe we look at certain thresholds of a match.
And shouldn't this
certain
be
items.
worked strategically, like through the grants piece and the economic piece? And I think
Correct.
Councilmember Hills, like this should all be coordinated kind of under a grant strategy?
Yeah, I agree, sir. And for instance, for a submittal such as this, if this committee would move it forward and it would be approved by mayor and council and ultimately would be received, traditionally, it's come back
Exactly.
to mayor and
This goes
council
back
committee
again.
and mayor and council to accept it. I would propose, or maybe I should wait for recommendation, but I would propose if there are no changes to the grant award and it comes back, that we should be able to go ahead and move forward with it without coming back to committee and mayor and council again to accept it.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, this is a perfect example of simple stuff that we as an elected body and we as a team of staff talent need to address. Simple stuff that's a waste of taxpayers' money, waste of taxpayers' time, a waste of the elected body's time, a waste of the staff's time, a redundancy and creating paralysis analysis that achieves nothing, right? But a lot of extra time and listening to this. To your point, this goes to committee, then it goes to the dais. Then if the grant's accepted, it comes back to committee, then and if that comes out of committee successfully, it goes back to the dais. This should be a one-time issue that should be part of a macro strategy underneath grants. So, sorry.
I'm Councilmember Palermo.
So I would say I completely agree with Mr. Knighton's recommendation on if there's no changes to the grant, that we shouldn't need to be voting on accepting it, because it's exactly what we all voted on to do. I would say when there's a match, though, I think it is important for the initial one, for like today, for it to go to committee and then council, not the afterwards when we accept it. But the reason being, the example I think of was regarding what was it? No, well, that one for sure. But, yeah, but there was one where Mayor Wilson actually had concern with the amount being used for the match, and we had changed it and adjusted it, which I think was a healthy discussion in committee. So basically, my thoughts as Councilmember Hills, as you're working with Mr. Knighton in the grants department on looking at recommendations, I think without a doubt for the acceptance part, if there's been no changes, but I think it is important for something coming here in case council doesn't want to match 18,000 in reality every time for that. That's a great use, but it's where Janet pronounces it better than us for the festival. And my daughter pronounces it much better than us. Yes, thank you.
Say again.
Dia de Muertos? Dia de Muertos.
That's better.
Councilmember Hills.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Knighton. So just a week or a week and a half ago, in meeting with Mr. Blitch and Mr. Alfred in the Grants Department, I was talking about how delighted I was to have this committee meeting where we have a whole passel, if you will, of grant items in one committee meeting. And I applauded them for listening to our request on that earlier this year about doing that instead of, I don't want to say nickel and diming because a lot of these are big bucks. But the other piece is recognizing the grant specialist that we hired a year ago that is really honing in. And I forget which council member I talked to earlier today. And I was like, yeah, here's the $18,000 one. And the response was, well, 18,000 is 18,000, which is true. But for our grant specialist to go after larger bodies of money that could include this sort of thing and then also enhance other areas in our police department, fire department, whatever the focus is. But so this is a reoccurring, Chief Conroy. We've gotten this a couple of years in a row, correct?
Yeah, I use language, we typically receive it because we don't know what the federal government's gonna fund that year, but this is a
Right.
typical grant.
Right. So in all honesty, I said, yes, let's go for it again because we're still working through some of those massages on getting a better program together. But yes, I hear you on making the steps quick and easy on the front end, and then we just get it and spend it and have the items that we need in place. So I'm on that, and I welcome any other feedback and requests on getting that better as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Yes, Councilmember Beeson.
Agreed that the process can be streamlined. I also agree with Councilmember Palermo that there's still a reason why we vote for oversight, but if there's any way on the administrative side that we could streamline that process and eliminate, we have 4 votes really, as opposed to 2. I'm good with the committee and the 2. And to Councilmember Hill's point, I do realize that there's a very wide variety of grants that come in front of us that are all kinds of matches or no matches whatsoever. That being said, assuming there's no other comments, I think we had a motion and a second. Are we allowed to move forward?
Yes, motion second. Any further discussion? I'm sorry. All in favor?
We're ready to go.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much. Passes unanimously.
It took longer than Joe's fire truck.
Exactly.
And then, Councilmember, yes, Markland.
Chief, real quick, one question on that last item, not to delay the passage. Would we be able to buy bulletproof vests for the canines through this grant?
No, this is specifically for police officers.
I think there's another grant for that.
Yeah, there are grants and we do get donations for the vest for canines. Yes.
They're custom
So
with
yeah, this
canines.
one's specifically for
Moving on.
police officers.
All right, thank you. All right, the final item on this committee is item number 4, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to award a contract to Dana Safety Supply Incorporated for police vehicle equipment upfitting in an annual amount not to exceed $126,836 with annual renewal options for a maximum of 3 years. Chief Conroy.
Yes, so this is a contract with Dana Safety Supply. This went out for RFP, and the selected vendor was Dana Safety Supply. This is to upfit the police vehicles for lighting, computers, dash cameras, and all the electronics, the modems that go into the police vehicles.
Thank you, Chief Conroy. Yes, Mayor Wilson?
Ryan, this has already been approved in the budget, has it not? Is this part of the budget process we approved in FY '23? It is. So another example of massive redundancy, where this item has already been approved by the elected body. It's already been allocated. It comes back to committee to do the same thing that we've already talked about. This is just another piece of redundancy. I don't consider this oversight. I consider it silliness. And it's something we've got to address and fix as a body, because this is not solving the equation of illumination. This is creating consternation in the elected body and in the staff, and it's not creating efficiency of work. So, it's a perfect example. We've already seen this item. We're going to pass it tonight, we're going to go to the dais, we're going to pass it again, but the budget's a big deal. That's why, like, in the budget, that's why we spent the last, 300 hours, at least? I mean, since January 1, exactly. Going through all of these recommendations and requests from department heads and directors and police chiefs and fire chiefs and city administrators and saying, hey, finance directors, can we get this money? And it is a responsibility elected officials have to come up with a budget. And the mayor submits a budget. This has already been submitted, just FYI, and voted on, and approved.
Councilmember Palermo.
So I guess my concern is there's typically a lot of things that get approved in the budget we end up actually voting down or not moving forward. So I guess that's where my concern would be regarding oversight, because if purely the full decision is all within the, I don't know how many pages that budget is, that gives me some concern of knowing if there's no recourse at a later point. That'd be my concern.
You have always have recourse, right? But like if they're not submitting to you an item that you turn down in the budget,
Correct.
right? This is, so.
But we've turned down things that they've submitted to us that they've been approved, not the chief.
Can you imagine the state legislature, the United States Congress passing a budget, then every item that they passed had to come back through committee, then back to the House, then back to the Senate? I don't know how this happened in Roswell. Got no clue. Got no clue how the city fathers and mothers got this process going. It is absolutely absurd. The budget is a significant instrument. It's how the staff, by the way, FYI, elected officials of the past, present, and future. If you want to know how the staff is running the government of the city of Roswell, they're running it based upon the budget. So whatever words that come out of their mouth and whatever posturing you think is going on and what you want to get done, how they're operating is based upon the budget you passed. Period. End of story. And you can come in and pass a little short-term ordinance and you might change some behavior, forgive me, because I don't mean to sound like, but I'm just telling reality. The staff, the talent of the city who operates the government, who's executing the principles that we, or the policies that we put in place. The principal policy they're working off is the budget we pass every year. And if you're saying to me that we don't know what we're passing in a budget, which, by the way, just a little FYI to the people in the past and all the great critics, that most of the councils in the past did not understand the budget, did not go through RAID to understand the budget, and did not understand the implications of the budget. And one of the things that I'll say to, I think, to your massive credit, of the elected council that came in 22 and the elected council here in 2023, is how serious and intentional you guys are about the budget, and how much you know about the budget, and how much decision-making you are making on it on a macro level and a micro level, and it's a big deal. But Michael, I got to tell you, I think it's an abrogation of responsibility to say, I passed a budget, now everything I pass, you got to bring back to me on the most minute basis. You got to bring it to committee, then we got to pass it on the dais, and by the way, in many cases, it'll get a second roll call. I don't understand that. I don't see that as responsibility. I don't see that as oversight. I see that as very, hey, we don't know what the hell we're doing.
So what it does, though, is it creates more opportunity for a unanimous vote on the budget, because I think the risk otherwise is, do you potentially have one small thing and one small disagreement creating a more of a disagreement on the budget? Just raising out there as a risk, just throwing out different.
That's a great point. And I would say pull it out of the budget. If there's something like, I don't think we don't have line items, but you can pull an item out of the budget, right?
So I can pull an item out, but I need someone to second it, and I need the majority to vote to agree to take it out. And then, so the question is, so if that doesn't happen, I'm just raising it as a potential risk and playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying you don't make the point.
This is me, by the way, and again, hugely unpopular. This is where we sell the narrative that we are serving our fellow residents. Kind of like public comment, like somehow we're serving our fellow residents. You know what? If we do this enough, somehow we're serving our fellow residents. I don't think that's true. I think it's just the opposite. I think it's paralysis by analysis. It's way too much digestion of information, and it's us saying we're not strong enough and bold enough to make a decision because we already did in the budget. And if there should be a good fight on the budget, there should be a good fight on the budget. Like, hey, I really disagree on this item. Pull it out. We're going to vote on it, and there should be robust debate on it, right? Like, I submit a budget, but you guys ultimately approve the budget, right? It's your budget, and the reason this budget's different, last year's budget different, is it's not like the mayor's working on it. The mayor's working on it with the council. So by the time it's coming there, it's like, hey, like everything we do together, like, so if there's any surprises out there providing in the public, everything we talk about should be socialized. When it's not, it happens in committee, pisses me off. Like, come on, guys. Like, we are responsible for working on things together as a body of people. You're the elected representatives of people. It's a representative government. This is a representative government. You You got elected to represent the people of Roswell. You got elected to represent the people of Roswell. You got elected to represent the people of Roswell. The guy that left got elected to represent the people of Roswell. You got elected to represent the people of Roswell. You got elected to represent the people of Roswell. I got elected to represent the people of Roswell. It's called representative government. And so with representative government comes real accountability for decision-making. And it means, hey, you're responsible for representing the people that elected for you. That doesn't mean you always get it right. That doesn't mean they always agree with you. But this is a perfect example where I feel like, oh my God, do we have to keep playing a game and selling it that's just to no ends? I mean, I just don't understand why we keep participating in this. I don't see how this serves the public, how it serves my fellow residents. If I were a resident on the other side and I thought my elected officials had to do that, I would say, out with you. Get gone. You're not doing my business. Like, doggone it, make decisions, be serious. So it kind of ticks me off, to be honest with you, as you can probably tell. I mean, like, I don't think it's us doing the right thing.
Councilmember Beeson.
As a fellow lover of efficiency, I love the discussion that we're having. Would love to continue with this, possibly in the setting of one of our ongoing monthly meetings where we get to meet with staff so we could work through the process, how this would look, and possibly bring it forward into a committee and then a council meeting so that we can streamline the process, but also in the interest of process. Would anybody be willing to entertain a motion at this point?
Motion to approve.
I was going to motion. It is police. I am public safety liaison. I was going to motion to approve this, and then we have a second already.
All right, so we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you all so much. And that does conclude.
Sorry, Jim.
That concludes the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for May 9th, 2023. We'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Hill, second by Councilmember Beeson. All in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you.
You got one more, right?
That's informational.